Australia's outback is a land that doesn't hide things easily. Tracks stay in the dust for days, animals leave patterns on the ground, and even a light breeze shapes the surface in ways that tell a story. It's a place where movement is visible, where disturbances stand out, and where silence can be read like a map. And yet somehow, a 4-year-old boy named Gus Lamont disappeared from a remote sheep station without leaving a single trace behind. It happened on September 27th, late in the afternoon, on Oak Park Station near Yunta. Gus was playing on a mound of sand outside the homestead, while his grandmother, Shannon Murray, kept an eye on him. A normal moment in a quiet, open landscape. She turned away for what she believed was only a brief moment, and when she looked again, Gus was gone. No cry, no sound, no sign of struggle. Just an eerie, expanding silence settling over the station. The first hours after a disappearance are the most critical. Tracks are fresh. The soil still holds shape. Light is still usable. But in this case, the early response faced immediate limitations. When police arrived, they established a 2-kilometer search radius around the homestead. To some, that sounds reasonable. But to experienced trackers and survival experts, it was a serious miscalculation. One of Australia's most respected private investigators, Ken Gamble, later explained that children, especially energetic ones, are capable of traveling much farther than most people assume. He said that if he were running the operation, he'd have initiated a 7 to 8 kilometer radius immediately, using a tight grid-based method to capture early evidence before weather and time degraded the terrain. And that raises an uncomfortable question. What clues were missed in those crucial first hours? The outback is unforgiving, but predictable. If a child had walked away, the ground should have told that story. Every footstep should have been visible, especially in the fine red dust surrounding the homestead. And yet, the search turned up only one footprint. Just one. A single imprint matching the type of boots Gus was believed to be wearing. Anyone who knows the bush understands how bizarre that is. A single footprint with no trail before or after it makes no logical sense. The soil was soft enough to capture one mark, so why not the next? And the next after that? That lone print became more of a riddle than a clue. It suggested a presence but not a direction, a moment but not a path, and it raised the first major contradiction in the case. Either Gus didn't walk far, or he didn't walk alone. Within 6 days of the initial search, something else unusual happened. Authorities reduced the search area. They scaled back. Survivability assessments for a 4-year-old in that terrain were declining fast, and resources were redirected. But then, days later, the radius was expanded again, this time to 5 kilometers. Why widen the search after narrowing it? What new information triggered that shift? No clear explanation has been offered, leaving another puzzle in the timeline. By the time the radius increased, days of wind, heat, and natural erosion had already smoothed over the landscape. Any faint traces that might once have existed were likely gone. Bush trackers know that the outback preserves clues, but only for so long. A week of missed opportunities can erase everything. Another major search decision came on October 31st, when authorities drained a massive dam on the property, 3.2 million liters of water. It was an enormous operation, and a necessary one, considering the possibility that Gus could have fallen in early on. But after emptying the entire dam, they found nothing, no clothing, no body, no object belonging to Gus. For search experts, this was a definitive outcome. If a child had entered that dam shortly after going missing, anything should have been found. Meanwhile, Gus's family made the unusual choice to remain silent publicly. His parents, Gus Lamont and Jessica Murray, his grandmother Shannon, and his grandparent Josie issued only one brief written statement through a family friend. No televised pleas, no interviews, no direct appeals to the public. Some families simply don't want cameras in their grief, and silence is not an admission of guilt. But in Australia, the public is accustomed to seeing parents speak out when a child disappears. Their silence created a vacuum, and social media filled it with rumors, AI-generated images, and unfounded accusations. None of this helped the investigation, but it illustrated an uncomfortable truth. When official information is limited, speculation grows. Another point of interest emerged around search technology. Modern missing person searches often use LiDAR-based aerial scanning systems that map terrain in extremely high detail. These systems can detect shallow depressions, hidden burrows, or objects concealed beneath scrub. Private investigator Gamble suggested that a tool like LiDAR could have been decisive early on. But when journalists asked SA police whether this technology had been used in the search for Gus, the response was no comment. Not a confirmation, not a denial, just silence. That silence doesn't prove anything, but it adds another layer of opacity to a case full of unanswered questions. At this point, some experts began to consider an unsettling, though purely hypothetical, possibility. What if Gus didn't walk away at all? To be clear, there is no evidence of abduction, no tire marks, no unknown vehicles, no reports of strangers, nothing to suggest foul play. But there is also no evidence that he traveled on foot. No trail, no belongings, no additional footprints. And that lack of evidence becomes its own form of evidence. Natural disappearances leave natural clues. This case didn't. Several timeline questions also remain unresolved. How long exactly was the gap between the last confirmed sighting and the moment Gus was noticed missing? Was it 2 minutes? 5? 10? Longer? That gap determines how far he could have gone under his own power. Another question. Were specialist Aboriginal trackers brought in early? Their skill is unmatched, especially on red earth. If they were consulted late, or not at all, that would be a significant missed opportunity. The Outback is rough, but it is not a perfect eraser. Most missing persons cases, even tragic ones, leave something behind. A shirt caught on a branch, a hat, a toy, a sock, a footprint trail, a scuff in the dirt. Something. But here, weeks of searching produce nothing except that single odd footprint. No personal items, no biological material, no environmental disturbance. It is the total absence of clues that makes this case so unsettling. SA Police Commissioner Grant Stevens later confirmed that the search effort had undergone at least 2 independent reviews. These reviews identified opportunities to enhance the operation, but offered no direct criticism. Stevens also said they have not ruled out returning to Oak Park Station for another search. Authorities remain committed to giving the family closure, but the reality is that every day that passes makes answers harder to find. For many Australians, particularly older men familiar with bush conditions, this case just doesn't make sense. It defies how the land behaves. It defies how tracking works. It defies what should have been found. And that leaves people with an uncomfortable question. How does a child vanish so completely in a place that records everything? If he walked away, there should be tracks. If he fell, there should be signs. If he drowned, the dam should have revealed it. If he stayed nearby, something should have been found. And if none of those things happened, then what did? Until new evidence surfaces, the disappearance of Gus Lamont remains one of the most baffling mysteries in Australia's recent history. A case where the land, which always tells a story, seems to have gone silent. And in the Outback, where the dust remembers everything, this time it remembers nothing.